All right, this video is going to be a tutorial for working on compression, and compression is something that gets talked about a lot in yoga and in hand balancing. And basically it's the ability to fold your legs, or I should say the thigh, actually the upper leg, in toward your torso and into your chest as completely as you can. So the compression is actually shortening your hip flexors so you can pull everything in and draw things in muscularly. Now you may be flexible enough to put your leg into that point, like when you're laying down, when you're on the floor. In yoga, if you get in a child's pose, you're basically coming into a compressed position. So, when you're on your legs like this, I've got my feet flat underneath, and I'm just gonna bring everything down and close the gap between my chest and my thighs. And I can bring my legs together. This would be full compression here. It's a full fold. It's not really compression because basically, all I have to do is use gravity. I can be passive and I can just lay down completely over my thighs. Now, to engage that muscularly, so that you can actually pull the legs in that close once you're standing up, or when you're standing on your hands and you're upside down, or you're trying to take some other sort of position and actually use the control of your own body to put your legs in that position, it's a much different thing. So you have to tighten up you don't really have to tighten up the hip flexors so much. You have to be able to shorten them voluntarily. So you're contracting that muscle as much as possible to draw the leg in close. And it takes a good bit of work to get into that so you can actually do that at will. So I've been working on this quite a bit for a few years, and I can compress things in pretty tight. So if you look at me from the side, when I'm on my right foot, I can bring my left knee up. I'm just gonna have my hands on my hips, and this is all just muscle tension. So I'm gonna keep my torso upright and pull my leg in as close as I can. And then right here, I'm closing the gap between my thigh and my belly, and I'm just pulling into that as much as I can. And that keeps the leg lifted. So when you're upside down, you can use that when you're in a stag shape or when you're in a tuck shape. Or if you want to work on a handstand press, that's the kind of activation you need. So it's important to work on that. It's valuable. It kind of sucks because tightening up those muscles and really working that shortened, that end range position is tough. But to show you what I'm talking about here, so if you're in a handstand and you want to take that similar position, one way to work on your handstand, especially when you start balancing, I have people use a stag shape. So it's one knee bent and one leg straight, and the bent knee, that's going to be my bottom leg, I'm going to pull it into my chest and do the same sort of compression that I showed you when I was standing upright. So to use this for a handstand, I got my hands down, shoulders over wrists. This is just a single leg kick up, but I'm going to bring this into the stag shape with one knee bent and one leg straight. So when I bring this up, I'm pulling the bottom leg in toward my belly, into my chest as tight as I can. Now I got a little bit of gravity on my side, so the weight of the leg hangs down. I'm using the muscle tension to pull the leg in close. And if it was more open, if I didn't have much compression, my knee would be further out from my body, and I'd have to counterbalance this more. But from here, using that compression, that tension right at the hip crease, that's what pulls the leg in. And it's good because it helps you to stack your weight in a certain way. So you can actually get your hips over your shoulders and keep them there. That's one shape you can use that in. You can use this in a tuck as well. And that's if you're coming into a really deep tuck. So again, I'm on my hands. I'm going to bring this up. So this is a more open tuck. So basically my thighs are toward parallel with the floor. I'm going to pull this down and draw the thighs in close. And you pull the thighs in tight like that to close the gap between your torso and the thighs. That's the compression. That's the tension that you're trying to recruit to make that shape happen. And then the other thing, the other big use for compression is when you're trying to press up, because the tighter you can get your legs in, the better off you are, because then it's easier to stack your hips over your shoulders, and it's much more important for people who are like me, who aren't extremely flexible. I don't have a hugely flexible low back, so it's very hard for me to just take an arch in my spine and pull my hips back so that the legs lift. So when I come into this, I've got to walk it in close. So I've got my shoulders over wrists. There's a little bit of a plunge, but I'm bringing my legs in tight. And then I can pull in close enough that I can just tip the hips up, and that helps to lift my legs. When I come back down, I'm using the same sort of compression, drawing the thighs in close. And then I can set the feet back down. It takes a lot of work. And if you're not a very light person, it's very muscular, and you're moving with a lot of strength. Now, there's a bunch of ways to work on compression, keep in mind. Now, in yoga, the most common way to work on compression is to do a pose. Either you can do boat pose, and this is where you're seated on your sit bones, bringing the thighs in close. And if you just want to work the compression itself, you can recruit the muscles, find the position first by bringing your hands to your knees, pull everything in tight. And so I've closed the gap completely between my thighs and my torso so I can sit this upright. There's no space here. I can't get my fingers in. If you can hold this without your hands squeezing the knees in, then you're recruiting the engagement you need for compression. And if you can keep that, maybe take it further and lift your feet. And this is tough. You're going to want to lean back. You're going to want to open that gap. But the more you can pull this in, the more you can work on this. And you just want to hold this kind of thing for time and come back and forth. You can always do it with one foot up and then another. And you're just kind of playing games with the compression there. Just get used to holding the tension. And it's not that stressful to do it when you're seated like this in boat pose. Now, another way that you see people working on compression in yoga is this with this lolasana pose. And this is rather intense, actually. It does work. It does get you working using the compression itself. However, this isn't exactly the ideal position to work on this from because you can't just focus on the compression. At the same time, you're working on the press, so you're getting into your shoulder strength and your arm strength and the mobility of your scapula. And so whether or not this is going to pay off for you as a useful exercise, especially if you're just starting to build strength in the upper body, this may or not be useful to you to start. But you'll see this especially with people who practice Ashtanga. Now, coming in lolasana, I've got my knees together, my feet together underneath me. And from here, I'm going to compress, but with my chest parallel to the floor, basically. Now, if you're not used to this sort of thing, then basically just lift the thighs and keep your feet down on the floor. So I'm going to bring this down, and I'm closing that gap right away. My hands are halfway down my thighs. I'm just going to keep my feet down, kick into the floor as I lift. The thighs come up with me. I'm going to shift the shoulders forward and keep that gap closed between my belly and my thighs. Now, if you can take it further, you can stay lifted like this and pull your feet up. And that is very intense. It's very stressful. You're not likely to hold that for longer than, 10 seconds. If I really practice it consistently, I can get past 30 seconds. It's not very fun. It's not that enjoyable. It's a useful exercise if you're trying to practice things like jump throughs, where you're going from down dog to bringing your legs through your arms and going to seated. And it's kind of a necessary step because you have to be able to pull everything in to actually get the lower body through. And you're going to have a hard time if you got a short torso and long legs and you really have to press through your hands. So it's good to work on. It tends to be a more advanced skill for more advanced moves if you're going to work it from there from lolasana. And lolasana is not a lot of fun. You tend to cramp everything up. Now, another way to work on this, I have found has just been from standing. And I do like to use additional props. I especially like to use ankle weights just because they give you a little bit more feedback on what your body's actually going to do. So I'll show you that standing up at the wall. Now, when you're standing at the wall, you can work the tension that you need to draw the thigh in, and you can do this two ways. You can do this dynamically, and you can do this just by holding tension with your knee lifted. And usually in my classes, I will prep this with the dynamic movement first, which is basically trying to shoot your knee up toward the ceiling as high as you can, so engaging the compression very abruptly and trying to hold it, and then coming back down. And then after I've done this 10 times with my class, usually we'll just stay here, keep the knee up, pull it in tighter, stand up taller, and then release and count this down. So I'm going to show you two ways to do this. So I'm going to do this just with no weight, just using my legs themselves and using the tension of the thigh. And then to build up a little bit past that, I'm going to put on an ankle weight, and I'll show you the difference here. And it looks pretty much the same. If you put the ankle weight on, it's going to feel very different, but it does help build a lot of strength, keep in mind, even if you're just using a little bit of weight. So from here, I do recommend standing at the wall so you don't have to fight your balance. You want to work on the compression itself and not get distracted by anything else, about tipping side to side. So just keep one hand on the wall. You're not leaning in, keep in mind, but it's enough that you can stay supported. Your base foot, press it flat into the floor. You can always bend the knee. You're going to press down on that foot as you pull the knee up as high as you can. And when you start this, step your foot back because you want to lengthen out the hinge at the hip. So everything here should be lengthened in front of the pelvis. Other hand comes to you in the opposite hip. And then just stand this upright. Keep your torso upright, keep your core engaged so you can just work the hip flexor and bring the knee up as high as you can. And this is what we take this through. So it's going to be 10 and then a long hold, and I'm going to count that one down from 20 or so. And you can always go longer, you can always go shorter. But from here, I'll just show you how we're doing this here. So keep this upright, just keep your gaze forward, and then bring it up for 1. Set the foot down, up for 2. Set the foot down, up for 3. Set the foot down, up for 4. Set the foot down, up for 5. Set the foot down, up for 6. Set the foot down, up for 7. Set the foot down, up for 8. Set the foot down, up for 9. set the foot down, up to 10, hold. And then with your free hand, just pull the knee in close, stand up tall. Try to hold the tension that keeps the leg in close. Release your grip and keep holding. So 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then release, shake it out. And of course, you do the other leg after that because you want to work them both. All right, now I'm going to show you the same exercise, but the difference here is I've got an ankle weight on. Now, I do recommend using ankle weights, especially if you're practicing inversions, just because it's good feedback, even just a little bit extra weight, using a ½ pound, 1 pound. This is 5 right here, but I've been using ankle weights for years. It took me a long time to get used to this. 1 pound is going to seem like a lot. 2 pounds will probably seem like a lot, and that's a good level to start at, keep in mind. Once you get used to it, you can take things further. But this extra weight on your foot makes your foot feel much different, and you become much more aware of where your legs is in space when you come upside down. So that's the biggest benefit of using this. And then obviously working on the compression, it's more resistance. So my foot's going to be heavier. I need to engage more force to come into that full compression. And so that's where this comes to. Now I'm using 5 pounds now. I use as much as 10 pounds sometimes, but keep in mind, you're going to have to take a while to work toward that. So just go slow, go light to start, and see how your body responds. So again, just like before, I got my hand on my hip. That foot's back, so you want to lengthen out the front of the hip on the leg that you're going to bring up. Keep in mind, so everything's nice and smooth, so no hinge right away. Keep your torso upright. And then again, up quick, smooth on the way down, and then we'll hold on the last one. So from here, just keep your torso upright, and then 1, come back down, up to 2, come back down, up to 3, come back down, up to 4, come back down, up to 5, come back down, up to 6, come back down, up to 7, come back down, up to 8, come back down, up to 9, come back down, up to 10, hold. Take hold of the knee, draw it in close, stand up tall. Try to keep the leg in place when you release your hand. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then release. And then as a little bit of a counter to that, because there's going to be a lot of tightness, you'll probably get some cramping, I do recommend at least doing something like a long lunge. And again, you can use the wall here, you don't have to fight your balance. But the leg that you've just tightened up, step that back, and then just sink down. Keep your torso upright. You're trying to lengthen out the front of the pelvis on that side. You'll feel the stretch. Maybe just stay up here, maybe sink down, hold tension through the front of the leg and the front of the hip, and that'll help you work that tension out. And there's other things you can take that toward, keep in mind, but I'm just going to focus on the compression part for today. So I hope this helps.